Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV back with another Market Watch. Guys, I am super excited because we are finally starting to see regionals and events opening up again. It does finally feel like things are starting to get back to normal. I do know it's still early, but I'm really hoping that we will be able to travel and go to some regionals and YCSs and whatnot. With that, of course, that means that people have been buying physical Yu-Gi-Oh cards at a higher rate than they have been over the past couple of years. And with that, we are bound to see a ton of crazy price spikes and price jumps over the next several weeks as people grab the staples that they need in order to play. And so today we're going to go over a few of the interesting price spikes that we've seen over the last week or so. Let's get started. So kicking things off, I want to take a look at Riza the Mega Monarch. This is a pretty expensive card for the last several months as a key boss monster that is played in the Floowandereeze deck. It allows you to bounce cards from the field and graveyard to the hand and top of the deck. I think that without this card, Floowandereeze definitely aren't as strong as they are currently, so this is definitely a really important piece for them. As a result, either of the two secret rare printings of this card are going to cost you around $65 to $70 a piece, which is crazy because I remember when this card first came out, you were lucky to get like $5 for it. Anyways, I think that Floowandereeze have actually proven to be a more viable deck than a lot of people were expecting. The quick play spell card, the Advent of Adventure, really helps the deck when playing around Infinite Impermanence and Effect Failure, and while the deck isn't super complicated or difficult to play, it can definitely hold its own against the other top decks of the format. Megariza is one of the few expensive pieces of the deck. I think that aside from like this and Pot of Prosperity, the deck is actually quite affordable. That being said though, given that Megariza was printed quite a few years ago, I am 100% expecting this card to be reprinted in Ghost from the Past 2, just like how Mega Thestalos was reprinted in the original Ghost from the Past. Alternatively, I think we could see this card get the Kuraz treatment and be printed as an OTS Tournament Pack Ultimate Rare, but I feel like that would just be a waste of a slot. Either way, my point here is that if you have copies of Megariza that you aren't using or you're just holding on to, definitely consider offloading it while it's at this ridiculously high price point before that reprint comes, gets confirmed, and inevitably tanks this card's price back down. The next card I want to take a look at here is Super Polymerization. This is a card that sent shockwaves throughout the community just a few days ago when the Ultimate Rare version was actually bought out. We saw the card go from $90 to $180 out of nowhere. Well, now the card has settled back down a little bit as the ultis are up to $160. The card does have two other high rarity versions, secret rares from the Raw Yellow Mega Pack and Legendary Collection Generation X sets, which are going to cost you about $20 to $25 each. Super Poly is definitely a really cool card. It's one of those things that people often refer to as a spell speed 4 since your opponent can't respond to it. It's not really a spell speed 4 since you can't chain Super Poly to a counter trap, but that's just what people say. You can use this card to clear multiple monsters from your opponent's field. Definitely a really useful card whenever you get into any sort of format that features a big fusion strategy. I remember when the Shaddoll structure deck came out, a lot of people were maining this card, I feel like, at least at a local level. With the Despia deck coming out in just a month or so, I think a lot of people are expecting Super Poly to once again be a useful side deck card. You can't use this card to summon Guardian Chimera, but you can definitely interrupt your opponent's combos or break apart pieces of their end board with this card. Fortunately, Super Poly does have several different lower rarity printings, including structure deck commons that should only be $1 or $2. Historically, Super Poly is a card that can get expensive when a lot of people are playing it. So even if you don't want to bling out your deck and play the highest rarity versions, make sure that you at least pick up a lower rarity set for yourself to use so that you have them available. So continuing on with looking at some of the branded related stuff, we have Branded Opening. This is a super rare from Dawn of Majesty, and it is a very important card for the Despia deck. It allows you to discard a card and then take a Despia monster from your deck and either special summon it or add it to your hand. Now, a couple of things to note here. One is that the discard is a part of the effect, right? It's not a cost, so if your opponent ashes this card, you don't have to discard. Number two is that this is actually a quick play spell card, so just like with Salamangreat Circle, you can play this card during your draw phase in order to play around Droll and Lockbird. Anyways, everyone knows that we have the Albaz Strike structure deck coming out soon. I do think it got delayed, so it might not be coming out until the end of April, something like that. But a lot of people are really looking forward to it since you can get so many of the cards just from the structure deck itself, and the deck is doing quite well over in the OCG as well. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't run 3 copies of this card. It basically means that you get to run 6 copies of your starter, which is awesome. However, this card wasn't reprinted in the structure deck in the OCG, and so I think everyone is assuming that this card will not be reprinted in the structure deck here in the TCG either. Because of this, everyone is kind of freaking out and buying their copies now, which is probably the safe call. This card was just a couple of dollars a few weeks ago, but now it is up to $5 to $6 a piece, which is a lot for a super rare from a relatively recent set. It's kind of a gamble. If the card does get reprinted, right, then it feels bad to have picked them up this early. However, if it doesn't get reprinted, then I could definitely see this card shooting up to $10, maybe even $15 if the deck is really that good and makes up that much of the meta, since it's a necessary 3-of for what will be a fairly popular strategy. I think that the safe play here is just to pick up a set for yourself and hold on to it, because if it doesn't get reprinted, this card is definitely going to become exponentially more expensive and difficult to find. Okay, so this one's a bit strange. We have Magical Spring. This is a card that I feel like has gotten random waves of buyouts and hype over the last half a decade or so, but it is quite an old card, so don't feel bad if you don't know what it is. Basically, this is a quick play spell that lets you draw cards equal to the number of face-up spells and traps that your opponent controls, and then you have to discard cards equal to the number of face-up spells and traps that you control. And in exchange, your opponent's spells and traps can't be destroyed by battle or card effect, and they also cannot be negated. This card did come out back in the Pendulum era. I think people did talk about using this card to play around Wavering Eyes. You do have to discard at least one card, right, since it counts itself, but you could pretty easily turn this card into a draw 2, discard 1, maybe even a draw 3, discard 1 in the right situation. Now, I don't know exactly why it is that this card is being hyped. I don't remember seeing it in any of the deck lists that I looked over from this past weekend, but if I had to guess, I would assume that this card is seeing hype for the DDD and Adventurer token matchups. Against DDD, you can draw when they have the scales up as well as a Dark Contract, right? So that's like a draw 3, discard 1, which is pretty good. Or against the Brave, having Fateful Adventure and a Draco back up counts as 2, so you can just chain this to something else that they play for the draw 3, which I guess is pretty cool as well. This card only has 2 relatively old secret rare printings from back in Duelist Alliance and then the Megatins from that year, so if you are looking for this card, it's probably going to be pretty difficult to find. The original secret rares are going to cost you about $10 a piece, and the reprints are sitting at about $5, which is a lot more than the $1 or $2 that this card has historically been sitting at for most of its existence. Definitely the type of card that you will want to dig up out of your bulk if you can find it, so that you have it ready to either use or offload. One card that I briefly want to mention here, we have Creation Resonator. This card is a level 3 Fiend Tuner monster that has a really simple effect. If you control a face-up level 8 or higher synchro monster, you get to special summon this card to the field for free from your hand. It seems kind of odd, but basically, this card has 600 defense points, which means that it can be searchable via Cupid Pitch as a combo extender. It's kind of niche and it is just a 1-of, but there are some random combo decks that want to be able to use this card. However, the card only has 2 printings available, one as a rare from the infamous Starstrike Blast, and then again as a common printing from Legendary Collection 5Ds, another set that wasn't really very heavily opened. Because of this, you are going to have to pay around $12 to $13 for either copy of this card, which is a fair amount for a 1-of brick that doesn't even have a holo printing yet, that is only used by certain strategies. I'm pointing this card out because I think it's almost certain that this card is going to be reprinted in Ghost from the Past 2 as well, where it can get a holo upgrade as well as be made more accessible to the entire player base. If you guys haven't looked into this card before, you will definitely want to skim through your bulk to see if you have any of them lying around, so that you can offload them while they are still quite expensive before it gets reprinted and tanks in price. Up next is a card that I think is kind of on everyone's mind at the moment. We have Crossout Designator. So obviously Crossout Designator isn't the $150 card that people were thinking it could have been when this card first was released. We've all been watching this card tank in price pretty steadily over time. In fact, I think everyone was kind of underwhelmed by it initially, and for a while it did seem like no one was going to be using it at all. Now, however, that regionals are starting back up again, we've actually also happened to see this card make its way into a lot of successful decks. We all know what this card is and how important it can be within the meta, allowing you to negate cards like Nibiru or Infinite Impermanence, and so I think most of us will agree that it was only a matter of time before this card started to see more usage within the format. This card did kind of bottom out at around $25 each, but we are starting to see it creep back up in price as Crossout Designator is now a $32 card, with quantities slowly but surely starting to be bought off of the market. I don't know exactly what this card's ceiling is, especially because you can still get cases of the 2021 Megatins for relatively cheap. However, I would say that this card definitely has the potential to hit around $50 if enough people were to buy into it, which isn't even that expensive, to be honest. Given this card's shaky price history, I don't think I would want to invest in too many copies of it myself. We can't let a couple of weeks of events change the way that we look at this card completely. But I will say that if you don't own this card, you'll probably want to get a set for yourself now to use, just in case this surge in popularity is real and the card starts to see more play and more demand moving into this upcoming format. Alright, and the last card I want to talk about briefly here is an older format card. We have Snowman Eater. So this card is pretty simple. If it's flipped face up, you get to destroy a monster on the field, kind of like a man-eater bug, but it has 1900 attack points. This is a card that was actually useful in a number of different older formats. Most notably, it was used in Edison format, which has really picked up in popularity recently as a wall that you could then tribute for Caius, but it's also useful in Dino Rabbit as well, where it could survive an attack from a Sabersaurus, a Guaiba, or a Cabazals and destroy the attacking monster, and then it can be used to make a rank 3 Ixies as well. Now, fortunately, this card does also have a couple of common printings out by now, so you can get this card for like a quarter or something like that if you just want to use it, but it does have a Turbo Pack super rare printing that is crazy expensive right now, up at $50 lowest on TCG Player at the moment, though I think that nothing has sold for more than around like 30 to 35, so definitely don't overpay for this card if you are looking for it. Also worth noting is that it has a super rare printing from the 2018 advent calendar that you can still grab for $1 or so if all that you're looking for is a holo upgrade of the card. Okay guys, that is it for today's episode. Hopefully all of you guys are as excited for IRL Yu-Gi-Oh to be back as I am. I know I'm definitely looking forward to going to events and traveling again, and it's going to cause a ton of movement all over the market as well, which is always exciting for me. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's market watch, please make sure that you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button for me. Also make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think about the cards that we talked about today and what other cards are trending on the market so I can cover them in a future episode as well. Also, if you guys haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.